Imagine this. You wake up one morning and realize that you've stopped responding to someone who has quietly dominated your life for years. At first, it feels strange, almost wrong. You remember the countless messages, the subtle manipulations, the ways they always needed to be at the center of your attention. And yet, you don't answer, you don't react. You simply step away for your own peace, for your own boundaries, for your own life. In another room, perhaps miles away, they feel it immediately. Suddenly, the world is not moving according to their plan. The control they relied on, the constant flow of validation, the sense that someone else's thoughts, actions, and attention revolved around them. It's gone. They search for you. They replay your interactions. They feel something unfamiliar, fear, frustration, even a hint of panic. It's in these moments that the quiet truth becomes clear. Boundaries are powerful, and your absence can speak louder than any argument, any confrontation, or any explanation ever could. A simple act of stepping away can create ripples in someone else's carefully constructed world that they never saw coming. As one observer once said, sometimes the most important message we send is not with words, but with our silence and our freedom. That silence, that freedom, is what we are exploring today. What happens when a narcissist finally realizes that you are no longer there to feed their ego, to respond on their terms, or to keep their world spinning in the way they want? What they feel and why it matters reveals more about them than it does about you. But it also teaches us a powerful lesson about reclaiming our own lives. When someone finally disappears from a narcissist's life, the first thing they feel is a profound loss of control. It's not just the absence of the person, it's the abrupt disappearance of the power and influence they have relied on for so long. Narcissists build relationships in a very particular way. They are accustomed to being at the center, steering conversations, emotions, and decisions. When you are present, your actions, words, and feelings are part of their daily feedback loop, giving them a sense of validation and dominance. Losing that feels like losing a piece of themselves because their identity is often tied to being needed, admired, or feared. It's important to understand that this loss is not simply emotional. For a narcissist, control is a currency. Every interaction they have with someone they target becomes a way to assert authority, to test boundaries, and to confirm that they are the most important person in the room. When you vanish, that currency suddenly disappears. They can no longer monitor your reactions, shape your decisions, or manipulate situations to reinforce their superiority. This void is confusing and uncomfortable because it strips them of the structure they've relied on to feel powerful. At first, they may not even fully understand what has happened. The narcissist may try to rationalize your absence, convincing themselves that you will return, that this is temporary, or that they somehow can still maintain control from a distance. Their mind searches for any way to restore the familiar dynamic. They replay past interactions, analyzing every word and gesture, looking for mistakes or moments where they could reassert themselves. This mental loop can be exhausting for them because it highlights their sudden inability to manage the situation the way they once did. The loss of control also touches on a deeper insecurity. Narcissists often present themselves as confident, decisive, and unshakable, but this persona depends on having influence over their environment and the people in it. When you leave, their illusion of invincibility shatters. They may feel exposed, vulnerable, and even anxious, emotions they are not used to confronting. The absence of control forces them to acknowledge that their sense of self is fragile and dependent on others, which can be deeply uncomfortable. This struggle with lost control often manifests in behaviors that might surprise outsiders. Some narcissists become frantic, attempting to track, monitor, or reach out in ways that seem obsessive. Others may withdraw, brooding silently while internally trying to regain the upper hand. These reactions are not necessarily about caring for you in a genuine sense. They are about reclaiming the sense of dominance that has been abruptly removed. Every message, call, or even social media interaction is a subtle bid to re-establish the balance that now feels threateningly out of their grasp. Interestingly, the sense of lost control can linger long after the person has disappeared. Even when there is no direct contact, the narcissist may continue to think about you constantly. They might wonder what you are doing, who you are talking to, or whether you have moved on. These intrusive thoughts are a way for them to mentally hold on to control, even when reality makes it impossible. The more time passes without their influence over you, the more intense and uncomfortable this feeling can become. It's also worth noting that the loss of control can trigger a mix of emotions, from frustration to despair. The narcissist may blame themselves, you, or external circumstances for the situation. They may feel cheated or wronged, as though the rules of the relationship have been broken. But underneath all of this, the root feeling is a profound discomfort with not being able to direct the flow of someone else's life. Control has been their safety net, and without it, they are forced to confront feelings they usually avoid. In essence, the narcissist's experience of your disappearance is far more about themselves than about you. It is the sudden removal of their ability to influence, manage, and dominate that shakes them to their core. Their world, which they often approach as a carefully managed stage, feels unsteady and unpredictable. The absence of control exposes the fragility of the persona they've worked so hard to construct. It is uncomfortable, disorienting, and even frightening for them in ways that might be hard to recognize from the outside. When a narcissist realizes that you have truly disappeared from their life, their first reaction is often shock. It's a jolt to the system they've grown so used to controlling. For someone whose sense of self is tied to influence over others, your absence is not just surprising, it's deeply destabilizing. They are accustomed to being the center of attention, to having your responses, emotions, and decisions orbit around them. When that disappears, it feels as though the ground beneath them has suddenly shifted. Their mind struggles to process the reality that the dynamic they have relied on no longer exists. Shock, in this sense, is a natural human reaction magnified by the narcissist's dependency on external validation. They are used to being the one who drives the narrative, the one who sets the tone for interactions. When you vanish, that narrative is abruptly cut off, and they are left without the cues and confirmations that usually guide their behavior. This creates a sense of disorientation. They may replay recent events, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong, searching for a moment they could have prevented your departure. Denial often follows closely behind shock. The narcissist's ego cannot easily accept that someone has left of their own volition, without being coerced or manipulated back. In their minds, relationships are puzzles to be solved, and they believe there is always a way to restore the balance they desire. When you disappear, they may act as though nothing has changed, reaching out through messages, calls, or indirect social media attempts. They might convince themselves that your absence is temporary or that circumstances will inevitably bring you back. This denial is a defense mechanism, shielding them from the unsettling truth that they cannot control you. During this period of shock and denial, the narcissist may also attempt to rewrite reality. They might minimize the impact of your absence or create narratives in their mind that absolve them of responsibility. Instead of seeing your departure as a boundary you set, they might interpret it as confusion, misunderstanding, or a test of their worth. Their need to maintain a coherent self-image makes it difficult for them to confront the fact that their usual strategies for influence have failed. This mental gymnastics is exhausting, but it allows them to avoid feelings of vulnerability and inadequacy for as long as possible. In many cases, shock and denial also manifest in subtle and sometimes dramatic behaviors. A narcissist may increase attempts to communicate, sending messages that range from apologetic to manipulative, as if sheer persistence could undo what has happened. They might seek information about your life indirectly, trying to monitor your actions without acknowledging the emotional reality of your absence. Even when faced with clear evidence that you have moved on, they may cling to the idea that you will eventually return. This is not a reflection of genuine care or love. It is about preserving their sense of control and resisting the discomfort of being rejected or abandoned. The psychological experience during this stage is intense. Shock can bring a sense of disbelief that the rules they've relied upon no longer apply. Denial, on the other hand, is an attempt to maintain stability in a world that suddenly feels unpredictable. For a narcissist, predictability is closely linked to their sense of power and safety. When that predictability is removed, they experience an internal tension that is both confusing and threatening. They may feel restless, anxious, or even agitated, but these emotions are often masked by attempts to project confidence and composure. It's also important to recognize that this stage can last longer than outsiders might expect. Shock and denial are not just initial reactions. They can become patterns of thought as the narcissist continues to process your absence. They may obsess over interactions, dissect past conversations, and imagine scenarios in which you never left. This rumination is a way to reclaim a sense of influence mentally, even when reality makes it impossible. The more they resist acknowledging the loss, the more entrenched this cycle can become. Ultimately, shock and denial reveal how deeply a narcissist depends on external factors for their self-worth. Your disappearance challenges their sense of normalcy and confronts them with an uncomfortable truth. Not everyone can be controlled, and some boundaries are firm. Their initial responses may seem dramatic or confusing, but they stem from an internal struggle to accept a reality they are not equipped to handle. It is a period marked by disbelief, mental rehearsal, and attempts to maintain the illusion that nothing has changed. Once the initial shock and denial begin to fade, a narcissist often moves into a phase of rage and resentment. This is a stage that is deeply connected to their sense of self, because the loss of control you represent now becomes personal. For a narcissist, your disappearance is not just inconvenient, it is an affront. They see it as a challenge to their authority, a disruption of the world as they expect it to function. In their mind, people are supposed to respond to them, bend in subtle ways to their desires, and affirm their sense of importance. When that doesn't happen, the absence of compliance can trigger intense anger. This rage is not simply about frustration at being left. It is a mix of emotions that stems from wounded pride and the realization that they are not in charge. Narcissists often have a fragile ego, despite their outward confidence. Your decision to step away exposes a vulnerability they work hard to hide. It reminds them that their influence is not absolute, and that the control they've relied on to validate themselves is conditional. This awareness is uncomfortable, and anger becomes a protective response, a way to shield themselves from the deeper feelings of inadequacy that your absence has provoked. Resentment often develops alongside this anger. A narcissist may begin to dwell on past interactions, replaying them in a way that casts you as the problem. They might tell themselves that you are unfair, ungrateful, or unreasonable. This narrative serves a dual purpose. It preserves their self-image as justified and rational, and it externalizes the blame for what has happened. By attributing fault to you rather than recognizing their own limitations, they can maintain the illusion of control and moral superiority, even as they struggle internally with the reality of loss. During this stage, their behavior may become more aggressive, although not always in obvious ways. Some narcissists lash out openly, sending angry messages, creating confrontations, or attempting to provoke guilt. Others might adopt a quieter, more insidious approach, sulking, withdrawing, or giving the silent treatment in the hope of eliciting a response. These actions are all attempts to reassert dominance, to signal that they are not to be dismissed or ignored. The anger and resentment are rarely about reconciliation. They are about reclaiming a sense of power that has been disrupted. The intensity of these feelings is amplified by the narcissist's tendency to obsess over perceived slights. Every choice you made to leave, every moment you asserted boundaries, becomes a focus for rumination. They may replay interactions endlessly, dissecting words, tone, and gestures, trying to understand how you could defy them. This mental replaying fuels both rage and resentment because it reinforces the narrative that they have been wronged or disrespected. Their thoughts are consumed with the imbalance they perceive, keeping them locked in a cycle of frustration and anger. Resentment is also tied to their inability to experience genuine empathy in the same way others do. They may be aware on some level that your feelings and decisions are valid, but they interpret your departure as a personal attack rather than an assertion of autonomy. The natural human response of stepping away from a relationship that no longer serves you is reframed in their mind as betrayal. This distortion intensifies their anger as it transforms a neutral or healthy choice into a threat to their ego and sense of identity. Interestingly, this phase can also trigger a sense of rivalry. Narcissists may feel competitive, viewing your independence as a challenge to their status. They may imagine that your decision to leave is a reflection on their worth or influence, and this perceived challenge can heighten their resentment. Even if they do not express it outwardly, internally they are struggling with feelings of humiliation, envy, and the realization that they are not indispensable in the way they believed. The emotional turbulence during this stage is significant. Narcissists are often caught between wanting to punish and wanting to reclaim. They feel the sting of your absence acutely, and their ego struggles to reconcile this reality with the image of themselves as powerful and in control. Anger becomes a way to process these conflicting emotions, a temporary buffer against vulnerability and self-doubt. The more they dwell on their perceived loss and the inability to control you, the more entrenched their resentment can become. Ultimately, rage and resentment reveal the depth of a narcissist's reliance on external validation. Your disappearance shakes the foundation of the world they've constructed for themselves. The anger and bitterness are a reflection of that internal disruption. It is less about you personally and more about the fragility of the persona that has been built around influence, dominance, and control. Every thought, every reaction is colored by the struggle to regain what has been lost, even if that is only a sense of superiority in their own mind. Once a narcissist has moved past the initial shock, denial, and anger, another pattern often emerges: obsession and rumination. This stage is not about missing you in a normal human sense. It is about the inability to release control and the compulsion to keep mentally rehashing your presence and departure. When you disappear, they are suddenly cut off from the feedback and influence they relied upon, and their mind becomes consumed with trying to understand what happened, why it happened, and how they can regain what they have lost. Obsession in this context is an all-encompassing mental state. They may find themselves thinking about you constantly, analyzing every detail of your interactions, and imagining your current life. Even small reminders, a message, a memory, or something that reminds them of you can trigger a flood of thoughts. These are not fleeting reflections. They are persistent mental loops designed to reclaim the sense of connection and influence they have lost. Every scenario is imagined, every word dissected, every action replayed, often with the goal of determining how they were wronged or how they could reassert themselves. Rumination fuels this obsession. Unlike healthy reflection, which allows people to process feelings and move on, rumination keeps the narcissist stuck in a cycle of self-centered analysis. They replay conversations repeatedly, trying to pinpoint moments they could have changed to prevent your departure. They imagine different outcomes, often blaming you, circumstances, or even themselves in some distorted way. This relentless mental processing is exhausting, yet for them, it is necessary because it offers an illusion of control over something they cannot actually influence. The intensity of this mental focus is amplified by their fragile sense of self. Narcissists rely heavily on external validation to feel whole. Your absence interrupts that flow of affirmation, and their mind scrambles to restore it. By obsessing over you, they create a sense of continued engagement, even if it is only in their own thoughts. They convince themselves that by analyzing every interaction and outcome, they are still in some way managing or influencing the relationship. It is less about reconnecting with you and more about maintaining a sense of psychological dominance. This obsession can manifest in various behaviors. Some narcissists may check social media obsessively, trying to see what you are doing, who you are interacting with, and whether you have moved on. Others may replay old conversations, reread messages, or even revisit physical places associated with you. These actions are driven by the same need to feel in control. They want to confirm that you are still within their mental sphere, even if not in reality. Their mind refuses to accept a true absence, so they fabricate ongoing involvement through observation and analysis. Rumination also amplifies emotional volatility. Because they are constantly replaying interactions and imagining scenarios, their emotions fluctuate rapidly between anger, jealousy, regret, and even fleeting longing. Each imagined scenario can trigger new feelings of inadequacy or failure, reminding them that they no longer hold the influence they once did. This is exhausting for them psychologically, yet it reinforces the cycle because the intensity of these thoughts convinces them that they must continue analyzing. Another aspect of this obsession is the tendency to personalize your absence. A narcissist rarely interprets your decision to leave as neutral or as a boundary. Instead, they view it as a reflection on their worth or power. Every action you took, every boundary you set, is internalized as evidence that they have been undermined or disrespected. Rumination magnifies these interpretations, creating a narrative where they are constantly the injured party, and you are the one who has disrupted the natural order of the relationship. Even long after the immediate disappearance, this stage can linger. The narcissist may not have the ability to truly let go. While time may reduce the intensity of their obsessive thoughts, the habit of mental analysis often remains. Your presence continues to occupy space in their mind because it represents a loss of influence they are not equipped to process fully. Their obsession is less about who you are and more about their own inability to accept limits and the reality of separation. Ultimately, obsession and rumination are hallmarks of a narcissist's reliance on control. Your absence forces them to confront the fact that they are not the center of your world. Their mind attempts to reclaim this center through constant mental engagement, replaying scenarios, and analyzing your actions. It is a deeply self-focused process, revealing how entwined their sense of self is with the people they influence. Every thought, every imagined conversation, is an attempt to regain footing in a world where their control has been stripped away, highlighting the fragile architecture of their emotional and psychological world. When someone finally disappears from a narcissist's life, one of the most profound effects is on their ego. Narcissists present themselves to the world as confident, composed, and superior, but this is often a carefully constructed mask. Beneath it lies a fragile self-esteem that depends heavily on external validation. When you leave, it strikes directly at the core of their identity. Your absence is not just an emotional loss. It is a threat to the carefully maintained illusion of control and importance that their self-image relies on. For a narcissist, being admired, needed, or followed is a way to feel real, to feel that their existence matters. When you disappear, that sense of importance is suddenly called into question. They may begin to feel small, inadequate, or invisible, emotions they are not accustomed to experiencing. This is particularly unsettling because they have often avoided facing these feelings throughout their life. Your absence forces them to confront the uncomfortable reality that their sense of self is not as invincible as they like to believe. Insecurity often follows swiftly. A narcissist's confidence is largely performative, dependent on others reacting in ways that reinforce their superiority. When you step away, the absence of your reactions leaves them unmoored. They may begin to doubt themselves, asking questions they normally wouldn't. Am I not enough? Did I fail somehow? Why would they leave me? These thoughts are not aimed at personal growth or reflection. They are attempts to understand how their carefully maintained sense of dominance and worth has been undermined. Hurt ego and insecurity also bring with them a sense of humiliation. The narcissist may feel exposed in ways they have long avoided. Your disappearance is a clear signal that someone has chosen autonomy over them, that their usual tactics of influence and persuasion no longer work. This can feel like a public defeat, even if the departure was private. They may replay interactions in their mind, scrutinizing their behavior for flaws and imagining how others might perceive the situation. This imagined judgment compounds the pain, feeding both shame and resentment. These feelings often coexist with anger, creating a turbulent emotional landscape. Narcissists may feel wronged or betrayed, but beneath that surface, anger lies a raw sense of vulnerability. Their wounded pride amplifies these emotions, making it difficult for them to think clearly or respond rationally. They may swing between attempting to reclaim control and withdrawing in silent frustration, both actions rooted in their insecurity. Your absence is a mirror showing them that their power is not inherent, it is dependent on the people around them. The sense of insecurity may also trigger comparison. Narcissists often measure their worth against others, and when someone leaves, they may begin to imagine what they are missing out on. They might wonder if someone else is now providing the validation they once received from you, or if you are thriving without them. This comparison intensifies their feelings of inadequacy and can fuel a cycle of self-criticism mixed with attempts to justify their sense of entitlement. Every imagined scenario challenges their self-image, highlighting gaps between who they think they are and the reality of someone choosing to be independent of them. Interestingly, hurt ego and insecurity can also influence their interactions with others. A narcissist who has been confronted with loss may seek to regain confidence through external sources, looking for admiration or attention elsewhere. This behavior is less about genuine connection and more about patching the emotional hole your absence has created. They are trying to reinforce their sense of importance, to remind themselves that they still have influence, even if it's no longer coming from the person who left. This stage also brings introspection, but not in a healthy, self-reflective way. A narcissist may analyze your disappearance through the lens of entitlement, blame, and imagined personal failings, rather than seeing it as a natural boundary or a choice you made for yourself. Every thought is filtered through the lens of their ego, intensifying feelings of hurt and vulnerability. They may dwell on what they perceive as their shortcomings, yet rarely arrive at genuine insight or growth. Instead, these reflections often deepen their insecurity, reinforcing the fragility of their self-esteem. Ultimately, hurt ego and insecurity reveal the extent to which a narcissist's sense of self is externally dependent. Your disappearance threatens not just their control, but the very foundation of how they see themselves. The emotions they experience, shame, inadequacy, humiliation, and vulnerability, are uncomfortable precisely because they are unaccustomed to facing them. Their outward behavior may try to mask these feelings, but internally, the absence exposes a deep need for validation and the fragile architecture of a self that is sustained by influence and attention rather than genuine self-assurance. When someone finally disappears from a narcissist's life, one of the most telling reactions is the desperate attempt to reclaim what they have lost. This is often referred to in behavioral terms as hoovering, where they try to pull you back into their orbit. Unlike genuine attempts at reconciliation that come from remorse or care, these efforts are rarely about repairing the relationship in a healthy way. They are about regaining influence, control, and the validation that your presence once provided. These attempts can take many forms, from sudden messages and calls to subtle manipulation through social media. A narcissist may present themselves as changed or remorseful, promising to act differently, or they might invoke guilt, nostalgia, or obligation to lure you back. Every interaction is carefully calculated, designed to make you respond or re-engage in some way. The goal is not necessarily to rebuild a real connection, but to restore the sense of power and importance that your absence has threatened. What drives these behaviors is fear of permanent loss. For a narcissist, your disappearance is not just an inconvenience. It is evidence that someone has asserted independence from them, refusing to play the role they expect. This threatens their self-image and exposes the fragility beneath their confident exterior. Desperate attempts to reclaim you are an attempt to soothe that fear. By reasserting influence, they momentarily regain the sense of security that comes from having someone dependent on their attention or validation.